Okay, Danielle, we can begin in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order, and I'll just read our land acknowledgement. So on July 11th, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful for the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So we can move to approve the agenda. Any additions or changes?
Sorry, I have one more announcement. Apologies.
What did you have to add?
About this project that we're doing, the Climate Concierge Project.
Okay, sorry, email with
Is
that.
that in the round table one? We'll add it there?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other additions or changes? Approve it with that change? Okay.
Motion approval.
Okay, so we'll take a look at the adoption of the minutes. Any changes or corrections to the minutes? No, seeing none. Approve, fully approved, yep, all in favor? Okay. So we're on to disclosure of monetary interest. Any disclosures? Don't see any. So priority issues. Number one is 2023 work plan. Richard, would you like to?
Yeah, sure, I can start. So the last time we met in July, we talked about developing a work plan that would outline essentially how we would achieve milestone 1 till 3. And I had, in consultation with is it Elizabeth? Her name is Elizabeth?
At the county?
At the county, yes. So it's with Elizabeth. We were trying to work through how to have something more or less realistic for this work plan. And we're also discussing whether or not we needed additional staff resourcing to assist with this project, considering that it would be more or less something that would be shared in part with someone else. So this work plan was created with the idea that we'd also be getting assistance so that this would be much more manageable over time. Now the work plan starts in September, which we're already in, and it goes all the way till October of next year. Now, this is only a rough draft. I may not say draft on here, but it is a rough draft. And it has, so most of the work would happen in actually milestone 3 when it's drafting the work plan, but it begins with milestone 1, where we are doing the 2022 corporate emissions inventory. So that's something that happens every year. So every year there'll be an update of the inventory from the year previous. So this year hasn't been
working on a solution to bring in some part-time experienced people to help us with developing this plan. So at this point, we're working with the CAO on that, but we're hopeful to bring a report and a recommendation to council and to this group in the coming weeks. So I don't have more to say on that, but I can assure the committee that we are looking at ensuring that we're well served by folks who've done this work before.
I have a question,
Mhm.
just because I'm not familiar with this type of process. Is there communication out to the public that happens in milestone 1 or 2? Like,
Okay, so for milestone 1, there isn't much communication because we're just getting the baseline data. So unless we're communicating to the public that we're starting this process, we're not necessarily, I don't imagine us expecting engagement so far as them knowing that the process is happening. But for milestone 2, where we're setting the targets, when talking with Sue, it was recommended that we do the public process then so that they're more informed about what we're setting the targets for, and also giving suggestions on what they would like to be reducing their emissions on. And that helps us figure out our targets as well as just putting it in line with our action plan. Yeah, so that would be part of the milestone 2 section. So it'd be starting at the same time as trying to, so like we'd start the public engagement with the survey, and the survey would be going the length of the time as they're putting together the targets, so that it would be able for people to give their comments and feedback.
so I guess the root of my question is that my thoughts are that there is a lack of literacy around climate change that's been acknowledged. And so I'm wondering if we take every opportunity to incorporate some education at every stage of the process to try and counter some of the misinformation that's shifting the perspective a little bit in the wrong direction. And conscious of the fact that staffing is an issue, taking advantage of existing information and resources around that. For example, like whether it's sharing materials from our website at the health unit, or Science Up First has some misinformation debunking that's really quality posts. Like they're designed for social media by people who know how to share social media in a very interactive way. So just looking at what exists and what some good sources of information are that we can just kind of tack on as they make sense to do so.
Right, so are you done? Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
So you'd be incorporating the public concept, the public, I guess, engagement in the beginning. And you just have, I guess,
Yeah.
more literacy, I guess, educational aspects.
Yeah, I'm just thinking at any point in time, because if we're going to be looking to the public to support and I guess not counter the efforts that are being made to support the town, it might be easier to do if they buy into.
No, I hear you. I think that's a good idea. I think I struggle with trying to create an environment where they can buy in. You know, like the survey makes sense to me, but I don't know how we can incorporate it from the beginning. So I'm open to ideas.
Like introduction, like if anything that we do has an introduction of, you know, did you know, a few facts here and there wherever we can kind of squeeze them into, especially if it's related to a topic. If we're asking about the energy they use in their house, then maybe we can give them some facts about energy consumption.
So would this be like a pamphlet? Would this be like an email blast? Would this be like a social media thing? Would this be?
I'm thinking that it would be just a communication plan that could integrate any and all of those as it makes sense to.
Yeah. So
Within like just maybe identifying where are the points of communication with the public where they're going to be aware of what's happening, and what are the sources of communication that we can use for that.
I have a question for you, but I don't know if anyone else.
Carly.
So I think actually the communication plan is exactly what I was going to suggest. Like I think Richard's work plan is good. It identifies touch points where we're going to be asking for specific things from the community to help us develop our targets and eventually refine our goals. But sort of as a parallel and as an aside to sort of support the entire piece of the work plan, a communication plan that gets done much earlier would help us spell that out. And that's certainly something that as staff we can propose to the committee, the who, what, when, where, and how.
I like that.
Can I just go back to Carl's resourcing question? Because it's been going since June, and I thought that we were resourced. So so that I can manage my expectations better.
Mm-hmm.
What happens between meetings? How much time? Because if I'm expecting things that I shouldn't be, because we haven't funded this properly, so we almost started prematurely. I'm not pointing at anybody. It sounds to me like, because I'm finding it frustrating if we're not resourced. Why, we're pulling volunteers together. I thought we were ready to go when we started, but that was an unrealistic expectation on my part. So I'll lower my.
Yeah, and perhaps
Yes, sorry. Yes.
for you, Madam Chair, yes, perhaps we can have a sidebar conversation on that. But I think until we get additional folks, then we have the planning department with three people who are going to be the resourcing. We are looking to, you'll see, I guess the more detailed items that are going to take more time. We're looking to start in October, November, December to get those started, and we're hoping to have somebody helping us out a couple of days a week starting at that point. That's our working expectation now.
This area of expertise.
Exactly. So if we can't get that, then the three of us will continue to we'll continue to do our best, but we'll be looking at sort of divvying up the work plan on because it's fair to say that as this moves forward and some of those, and maybe Richard can speak to a little bit more detail on how much time he's expecting those first few milestone 1 pieces to go, but certainly otherwise we'll work on those with the staff that we have right now. Richard, can you speak to maybe how much time you expect these first couple of items might take?
Okay, so in terms of getting the data for the corporate emissions, if we don't have to do the 2022 emissions because we're only starting with the 2017, that makes it easier in terms of knocking off some of the things here. But developing the business as usual forecast, I'm not familiar with how the methodology would work because there is a manual and everything, but I haven't actually done the actual work to see how long this would take me. So like I understand it would take some time, but unless I'm sitting there and actually working through it, it's really just a guesstimation. Because there's no prior knowledge for me to go back and say, okay, this will take me 2 weeks, this will take me 3. Like we're learning as it goes, and that's the challenge of trying to create a sort of work plan because I would want this to take me 2 months, but I'm not quite sure if it really will take me 2 months. And that's sort of the thing. And if it was my solely one single job, it would be easier to commit to it. But because there are other priorities that I have to maintain, it's like I have to put some time aside. So I don't want it to be the corner of my desk either. But it's hard to say how long this will take me.
Sean, did you?
Well, that's sort of my question, I guess. The timelines that you've outlined here are based on the current staff doing the work or based on having some additional help?
Based on having some additional help.
Okay, so we would be doubling this timeline or more if we didn't have the additional help.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And I agree on the communication side. I think whether it's, we do have a communications department, which you can probably work with to send her that regular messaging. And I think we are a known and reliable source of information. And so I think it's important that that be available. And I think to work with this group, being communicated is also very important. So really maybe after each meeting, it's a matter of having a bit of a wrap up, maybe plus some additional information in there that would be helpful for the public to know.
I do like the communication plan. I think it has some interesting ideas. First thing I think about is a website, but I don't know how much traffic our website get. I don't know what the best approach is. I guess we'll have to talk with the communications person.
Let's chat after this meeting. I'd love to see what we can do maybe for the next meeting with the draft.
Yeah, because like the survey makes sense, but if we're doing like say initially trying to get the public buy-in, I don't know if an email blast is more effective or maybe just on the website itself. So.
Well, and I think, Sue, I'm thinking that I'd be happy to work with whoever, have a meeting and sort of share some ideas too and that sort of thing. The other thing that I've noted is that having consistency in messaging across different agencies is really important when it comes to disinformation, which is one of the issues I think we're going to need to deal with. So having groups like the network and the health unit there to hopefully reiterate, repeat, find messaging and so it doesn't create as much work for the communication plan if the messages are already existing and we can share and copy and paste and maintain consistency, because unfortunately when I'm through the misinformation work that I've been doing is that if there's any kind of discrepancy, then that seems to be fodder for people who like to spread disinformation. They try and divide.
Oh, they pick apart the mistakes and make
And they'll say, well, they said this and they said that, and it may be pretty much the same message, but it can be easily taken apart. So I think being coordinated and collaborative with the county or with whichever groups are working on climate change, maybe it's collaborating with North Grenville if they've got some stuff going on. Like I can talk to my peers too to see who's working with municipalities on climate change and what messages we can kind of. I think Sue had a comment.
Yeah, I completely concur with getting communications out sooner than later, with taking advantage of whatever resources the town has. Like, let's not look at, having to create something new. Let's just use what's there so that we don't have to delay. And it just being basically, the first message is the town is doing this. This is fabulous. And why, right? The 50% of emissions are governed locally. So, and that's a critical message that is still not out there and has to be out. And so repetition is always a friend. And it doesn't have to get much more complex than that at this point. It really doesn't. And then we can look at going forward at, what more we may want to say. But in terms of getting the public engaged, there is no one public, right?
that is right.
Not everybody comes en masse. And so it takes time for people to trickle through. And so our need is to be repetitive and to keep just getting that simple message out there. And then more people will come. When we get to the point of the public consultation, that whole process, I'm going to be talking about it being much longer than what you got there because of that need, right? Because people are slow to come to this stuff. So anyway.
Just to build on Subi's, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't want us to spend time and energy trying to convince people that are denied. We haven't got time for that. Like, we're not going to make, but the people that are open to more information and the fact that we've localized it, and this is what our community is spitting out, and here's our targets to reduce, and here's how you can help. Or here's your job.
Yes.
It's not, we're not going to do this for you. You have to be involved. So I don't really, I care about misinformation, but that's such a fight that we could spend all of our energy. I want to keep it as Sue said. This is what we're doing. We've got this committee. We're doing something, and the naysayers, I've moved past them. I'm not.
Me totally, Peter, and I will reiterate, we now have 2 surveys in Lanark County that say more than 80% of the population wants serious action on climate.
Yeah.
Let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
I think, and sorry, I didn't mean misinformation as in targeting those that
Right.
don't buy in. It was more that information that kind of spreads around as a, I don't know, shedding doubt for people who are on the fence. That's where I would target it. So I agree with you completely. I wouldn't worry about that 10, 15%. They're not going to be convinced, but there's actually some Signs Up First posts that I think might be helpful that kind of tap into some of that messaging that you're talking about, as well as a few other points that might be helpful. So there are some that are already done that we could use. Any other?
Maybe on that, I'm sorry, but the town has a communications person?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, that's right.
And so couldn't we not have that person meet with us or
Mhm.
come, and could we not like engage them and say, here's, what we want to do with that?
We can certainly work with Esther on that. She's great. She's very good at this, and I think she'd be very happy to help us develop something that works specifically for the needs of this group.
It doesn't have to be extensive at this point, it just has to keep going.
Well, I think just outlining where and when and how we get the message out and how we target it. I think it's good to have that ongoing. So when we're doing the formal consultation on targets, we're not just popping out of the blue where nobody knows what we're doing or where we're coming from.
Yeah, true. Sean?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what percentage, probably the majority of people traditionally getting in most recent years anyway, their information, their news from Facebook or Google, and that no longer being available for the most part. There's a real void in people getting factual information. So because our social media pages and the website have a pretty good following, like we leverage that in order to get the right messaging out. So
Do you think
we have
we
an
need printed
opportunity.
media?
Hmm?
Do you think we need printed media? Like,
Sue's saying no. I don't think there's not a lot of. I mean, hopefully the media will pick up what we're doing anyway, and we'll take advantage of it. And we can probably do some in focus on Lake 88 as well. That would be something. I mean, there'd be opportunity.
the radio station.
Yeah, so I think there's opportunity to part of that communication strategy. So then we need to develop the strategy, and I think hopefully maybe even Esther could help us with that strategy as she does.
Oh yeah.
With probably other templates where she already has that we could sort of fit into.
Yeah. I'm trying to see the scope of things.
So there's a lot more in here besides communication.
Yeah.
Because we're getting into the weeds, and let Esther do her job.
Yeah. Did you want to highlight anything else from the work plan here?
No. The only thing that we haven't talked about is just the action plan itself, like writing it. No, I believe that we're going to do the in-house, but I think we're going to be relying on resourcing for mainly 1 and 2. Is that right, for staff resourcing?
I would be my expectation is that we would be looking for we'd be looking for help to actually write the plan, whether it be somebody who's working part-time in our office or whether it's somebody who we hire out specifically for that purpose. But those are certainly conversations we'd be looking at around budget time to make sure that the expertise and the experience that is out there is reflected and develops a really good action plan.
So that's the other point, I guess. As we near budget time, do you have a plan within your own departmental budget to include money for this group?
That is certainly the expectation. Yes.
Okay. Good. I think we all understand how critically important this is, and we need help to do it. We want to make sure we're doing this in a timely fashion.
The timing for this is excellent now that we're probably about a month or so away from having those initial conversations.
So this draft work plan is following the requirements
Right.
for the format,
Yeah.
both the county. So this is kind of a standard, and it's our timelines and resources that will
Right, so the only thing that isn't included, so like the public participation, that's included because we think it's important, but that's not something that, say, the FCM requires.
Okay.
The only thing that's,
Sorry, what was that, Richard?
the public participation from LCM two, that's what we included. But the only thing that's required in terms of public participation is when the action plan is drafted, and that's when we have the public consultation that's required. Everything else is just for our own benefit. So besides the action plan and getting additional staff resourcing, there's nothing much that I can add right now. I like the idea of the communication plan. I think that get us a little bit more focused. I'm intrigued because for the targets, in terms of developing targets, you know, one can be suggested, but I don't know whether this, I know council has to make a decision on when you decide what the targets are, but that based on our recommendations. I don't know if that comes out of the public feedback in terms of the public says we want to reduce our emissions by this number, you know, or do we just as a group decide the number because we think it's best within what our resources are and what we can achieve, and then the public just accepts it. It's like, I don't know what happens first.
Sue, did you have something to add before that?
A few things, yes. Sorry. So at Tay Valley, the process that we used was we embarked on a public consultation very soon after we started the process. And it was to engage people in the development of the plan. And so we went through a process with the public in 2 meetings of actually putting to them, you know, what actions do you think you want? What sort of targets do you think you want? And we did, you know, the dot voting and all that sort of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fascinating because we gave options of, you know, basically sort of status quo or baby steps, or I can't remember the 4 sectors we had anyway. But we had about 30 people each night, and they all shunned the first 2.
See how that
No
goes?
to the status quo, no to baby steps. They all wanted serious action, right? And so that was our guiding force then. And then from that, we then went to passage of a couple of months' time of working out more of the detail.
Mhm.
And we went back to public consultation another 2 nights. Again, another roughly 30 people at each night, and put the actions to them.
Right, so you had 1 meeting to discuss which we want for each sector. Is that right? So,
Yeah, corporate, the community is less involved in the corporate, right? Truthfully, you know, it's your assets.
makes sense.
Now, you know, that being said, the community absolutely said they wanted the township to take serious action, right? They didn't want to, you know, be laggards. But the focus of the meetings was on the community actions. But yes, anyway.
I'm thinking in terms of for the OP update, we could tie in some, if the environment becomes an emerging theme, we can tie in some of our questioning there. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Just for this group's benefit, we are in the midst of undertaking, or at least initiating, an update to the town's official plan. We did some high level public consultation earlier this summer just to firstly introduce, get people thinking about it, but also to get a flavor from the community as to what they want to see, what they want to look at in that. And right now we're undertaking interviews with individual town departments and department heads just to understand what the management team would like to see in the official plan. And part of that process right now is to make sure that everyone has skin in the game. It's not just a planning department piece. It's something that's really meaningful that impacts all of our operations. But what this work is leading to is identifying 5 or 6 key themes that we're going to be specifically workshopping with the public to identify what you want to do, what they want to see, and how that can actually evolve into specific official plan policies. We expect that one of those themes, of course, is going to be housing. Another theme is probably going to be downtown revitalization. Like, we haven't finalized those themes. We'll be taking a report to council and looking for that direction. But one of those themes that we workshop with the public through the official plan process could be sustainability and climate change. So I think that's what Richard was suggesting. So there may be an opportunity to harmonize some of that consultation that we'll be doing.
Interesting, yeah. I have to just add that, okay, so that was the case in Tay Valley. Okay? And, you know, an engaged public, people wanted serious action and all that sort of stuff. At the county level, Climate Network Lanark recommended that they embark on a whole public consultation process. They chose not to. We, Climate Network Lanark, brought in Greenscale from Kingston to talk with the committee, and the county ended up hiring Greenscale as a consultant. And they have ended up doing quite a lot of work for the county, and one of the things they ended up doing was doing some calculations that showed that, you know, if the county did certain actions or whatever, they're not going to get very far in terms of their emissions reductions. And so that was in part how Greenscale ended up recommending to the county that their reduction target at the community level be 5 to 10% over 10 years. Okay, so like that's the the breadth. Okay, Tay Valley Township said 55%. County said 5 to 10%. Okay. This committee is critical in terms of figuring out how we go about doing this and ultimately what recommendation we make to council, right? At the time in Tay Valley Township, we had no capacity to figure out, to say, okay, if we manage to retrofit X number of houses over 10 years, what is the actual reduction that happens, right? That's part of what Greenscale did for the county.
They kind of match the recommendations to the emissions.
Yeah. That tool was supposed to be available through the milestone process. As far as I know, it's still not there, but I don't know details there. But it's worth inquiring. So I'm just saying that, you know, we have quite a role here in this committee to figure some of this out in terms of reduction target setting and how it gets set.
Yeah.
And we've had these discussions, you know, it can be aspirational, it can be so low ball that, you know, it's going to happen just because everybody switches to EVs. Or it can be, you know, maybe somewhat in between based on science. So there's a lot to take into account there, and I don't know how this group wants to proceed necessarily. I know how I would recommend, but
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I would think once we've completed our corporate and community inventories and we have an idea of what our baselines are, like that'd be probably the appropriate time to hold a public consultation and meeting to determine what do we want to set as objectives. Right? I think we all have a feeling what we would like to see individually and probably collectively. But that would be the time, because I think it's that understanding which may help, and at the same time it's explaining the IPCC standards and everything we should be aspiring for. But I think we need to have these inventories completed first before we start thinking about what our goals would be.
Yep.
So we have initial. Oh, sorry.
We're back on communications almost, but that's good. So it does, and it's a continuum, right? So I think telling, as Sue said, tell people what we're doing, that we've started, and what we're going to try and do. Then it gets more detailed into a public meeting or online surveys or whatever as we go along. But all the time, there's some key things around communication.
Absolutely.
So, and if we agree that these are the milestones and the work plan, the dates we're going to have to play around with. For me, I need to see who's going to do or what. We don't need to fill it in now, but there should be Because some of these are very resource intensive and some aren't.
Yes, for
So
sure.
it's to understand where do we need to invest? What do we have expertise already in? And where are the gaps that we need to either hire consultants or another part-time staff or whatever.
Okay.
So for me, a work plan, because this is identify what the work is, but not who's going to do it and what resources it takes. So I don't think we need to do it today, but if there's some things in there, that's going to take, that's beyond the capacity of the committee or the staff, then we should know that.
So basically identify the capacity with who's doing what.
Okay, Sue.
Yeah, definitely one thing I want to put in there is that the town needs to form an executive group, maybe not executive, but a staff group, right? That is looking at the corporate issue, and part of that whole issue is to engage them in thinking about climate, right? From the get-go, and to be engaging them with thinking about what their target is going to be down the road here, right? When you're going to ask them, what emissions are you going to cut, right? So that has to happen early on, because that's in my experience, and it happened when I did the project for Tay Valley, that I was engaged with a group of 55 similar people across the country. And that was one of the key lessons, was you had to engage the municipality itself in thinking about this stuff. And that's where we get into the bringing in the climate lens developed by Barb Argue. That could happen like now. And that could be part of training for municipal staff so that they're starting to think about climate actions right now. And it's communications and it's the whole kit and caboodle.
So you're suggesting
that has to be a line in there.
Right. I'm just trying to think about it, because I know the 217 baseline for corporate service has been done. So this should just, I guess, reiterate what had been done, or?
So I'm sorry. Again, I apologize, but anyway. So we do need to have the discussion. Is 2017 going to be the baseline or not? Can you choose another one? What's been done for 2017 is the calculation of how much energy was consumed and the GHGs produced. That's it, right? There hasn't been any other communication with municipal staff about that, or about any plan to reduce or anything that way. As far as I know, the province only still requires that report. They don't actually require you to take action that I'm aware of. So
Peter and then Sean.
Just, I again agree with you, Sue. I think you talk about communication, well, one of the audiences, all you're saying, is the town staff. Because there is no great public, you're right. So we target our communication to where, and you're just saying, here's an audience we need on board, whether they meet as a group or however or get a part on the all staff agenda at some point, or senior management. It has to be ongoing. So that's all I'm saying is that, and there's other target audiences, for lack of a better word, that, but I agree. Because it's a different communication to them.
And it is for the public.
Yeah, because it's not the planning department, the same as the OP is not planning. You might be spearheading it, but it's our plan. It's not.
Yeah.
We don't control, we have no control over corporate emissions.
Right.
Similar to the tree canopy policy, we develop the policy, but we rely on our colleagues to implement it.
Interesting.
We all work together.
apparently that has been, one of the defining things in London, with London, Ontario, was they engaged their municipal staff. Council said, this is really important, and thou shalt do this. And so that got all municipal staff on board, and they had developed a couple of their own different sort of climate lenses to apply to their work. So, and the other thing too then is you get to capture all these great ideas from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, the whole electric Zamboni thing is singularly brilliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so I think 17 was used as a baseline year because we started the conversation in 17, and 18 we joined PCP. Partners for Climate,
Yeah.
PFCP, whatever you know how to put it. We also did an energy audit through Honeywell, I think in 2017, 2018. So that gave us an idea of where we were at and what could be done in the short term. So there were a number of actions that happened as a result of the Honeywell audit that did impact our overall emissions. We do have those numbers somewhere. Those reports have come back to tell us what we've done. At the same time, a lot of things have changed corporately. So we've renovated this entire complex. So we probably reduced some emissions. We've done some streetlights. We've done some things at the community center. But I think that's, for corporately, it's probably still a fair milestone to work from. I don't think we've added any assets since then that would have increased us. So it's more a matter of, I think 17 probably is fair for corporate inventory. For community, we're much bigger today than we were in 2017. And we probably added upwards of 500 residential units since 2017. Yeah.
At least with more coming.
So we know that some of those are on natural gas, probably a lot of them. So I think we need to take the community inventory at a later date in order to be more relevant. Because if we use 17, our emissions today are probably significantly higher than what they were in 17. I mean, just growth alone would say we're probably 10-15% higher with nothing else. So the other piece, I don't know, that's my train of thought. Oh, so to Sue's point at our first meeting, we can walk and chew gum here. So I think it's important that one of the things we do, and maybe for our next meeting, is have that discussion on the application of a climate lens for the town. And we don't need to wait until we're done this process to do that. And I can say, based on the leadership we have within staff, based on the earlier initiative for the Honeywell audit, I mean, staff already have this mindset to some extent. I know that we've got 2 electric transit vans. Now we've replaced 2 gas vehicles with electric. I know we have a Zamboni becoming near end of life. And there's consideration that we'll definitely go electric for that. But there's a lot of things that we sort of making small steps, but having that application of a climate lens to all of our decisions is obviously critically important. So that's where it needs to start here and then go as a recommendation to council.
This is fabulous stuff, right? To be able to get out, to communicate to say that the town has taken the lead on blah, 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 right? Over the past number of years. I would recommend you have to check with FCM about the terms of your contract. Do you have to have the same baseline for the 2 segments, right?
Okay.
Critical question. If you can, make them different rate. Because if it's 2017 for the community.
Well, a bigger challenge, right?
Yeah, it just won't look good, right?
But it is what it is.
Yeah, no, yeah.
This is actually been really good. I'm intrigued to see how the corporate side for the communication would work out. I don't know if it's done at the department level where we just kind of circulate it that way and it trickles down, or there's a all town email. Like, I don't know what the preferred approach would be.
So I have a couple of the to-dos here that I'm recording for staff deliverables for the next meeting, just to confirm the committee's direction. So we'd like to bring forward just a quick report on the application of the climate lens on reports, how that's going to jive with the procedural bylaw. We can bring forward an update on that. The communication plan, we can bring forward an update on that, and that also includes looking both at the public as well as corporately within our organization. And then also we'll check with FCM as to whether it is even completely off the table to look at the potential for a different baseline year for the corporate emissions. And I think it's fair to say that the work plan here, as Peter had indicated, is not set in stone. There's always there's some unknowns here regardless of who we get to do the work. So there will be that potential flux. I think these items here that were just identified as action items for next meeting, those can certainly be done by current staff within the next couple of weeks. Anything, just confirming that's the committee's direction at this point?
I agree with all of those. I didn't know if you, or if the group wanted to see if you have the sense of where's the resource intense, where's the real, we're gonna do some heavy lifting here. If we do that, then these three things are fairly straightforward. I just don't have a sense, and Sue could probably, with your experience at Tay Valley and the county, and Richard, you're talking with the county, just say where could we best utilize if we get additional resources, where do we put them?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you haven't yet actually gone into milestone 1, you have. Okay, that's great. So I would highly recommend that you just get the data in there from the conservation and demand management plan, from the Ontario one, right? Plug it in. I mean, this is going to take you at most half a day, and then you can see it through to the BAU. And just see what you're dealing with, right? And the corporate stuff really is super easy. And Sean had mentioned about the organics, the composting stuff, data being available from the waste department, right? So that should be easy enough then to do the corporate. And that'll start to give you some feel for this whole thing, right? And I think you'll be able to then figure out timing much better. The community is 10 times the corporate at least.
That's true. Okay.
So just a question maybe for Sue. In terms of doing that consultation piece with staff, is there, like, I'm envisioning that there'd be some level of education at the beginning and then give us, so here's sort of a picture of what it looks like, here's what conservation, like reduction, different types of initiatives might look like. What do you see happening? Where do you see opportunities in your day-to-day work so that staff can come up and share those ideas? Is the network a place to go for resources for that education piece for the town, or?
No, not for the municipal level. The FCM's PCP's portal is the place to go.
Okay.
That's where all the 500 municipalities that are doing this are engaged with, right? And that's where you can go and see what actions. There's a bunch of them have been doing this since '94. So you can see what actions they've taken already, some of them, and then you can start to engage with colleagues across the country, and be looking for other municipalities of like size, like type, that sort of thing, right? And be learning from them then, right? So that's the critical piece of making friends, as I mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do need to throw in here though is the training on the climate lens. And so this specific one was developed by Bob Argue, who's a local climate expert, the guy behind EcoPerth, that stuff. It is singularly brilliant. And I've been in now on 2 training sessions with him, and people come away just, it's that simple. It tells me that much, and they're just wowed. And so I would highly recommend that we set up a time for him to train us and whomever you can pull from staff at the township, at the town, and just take advantage of that. And it would be at most an hour.
Interesting.
Could you follow up with him and me on that, please?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, good Bob actually come to our next meeting with delegation and
That was my next thing.
Yes, and the other thing, I believe we actually have our corporate inventory from 2017.
We do.
Okay, so we really know our baseline.
Yes, the baseline has been calculated already for 2017.
Okay.
And they've been done for 2020 and 2021. So that's kind of why I put it for 2022. That's sort of like we had to do a continual update. I don't know if that's something that we have to do in terms of the emissions to see, I guess, how we're operating.
And I'm sorry, I don't remember, I know, or at least I think I remember that the requirement was every 5 years you had to do a full suite
That's right.
of GHG update, right, for the community, which is harder to get, right, which is why it's, I think, at the 5-year mark.
Mhm.
And then there's a requirement, but check the contract, a requirement for reporting regularly, right, which is a bit different than actually doing the GHG calculations.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Just want to check on the sound, because the speakers, you're not hearing us very well at all.
No, but the resolution's much better. I was watching it at home.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're twin
Audio's not
person.
as good, the resolution's much better.
Because there are,
Oh gosh.
I know these speakers do work, we've used them before, but I don't know if they're all.
So I believe that the plus and minus button in front of you are actually your volume.
I speak quietly though, so I don't know. But
Sorry, just, thanks for coming, I just want to make sure you, because I even have heard from you.
That's the resolution button.
So if, on the work plan, besides the action that Carl's identified, is it still too early to, because we can't wait till the next meeting to do things on this.
oh no, things will be done on
Okay.
so there'll be updates in terms of what has been completed so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they'll accelerate as you get more resources or.
Right. So there'll be
Alright.
more information in terms of how long this will take us. Does it take us more time? Yeah. So there'll be more of an update in terms of what's more quote unquote realistic for the in terms of the workload.
Okay.
Any other comments or?
Just I went back and read our mission that you had at the very first meeting. Like if you start with that as a communication, put it out. It's already established. It's it's only 5 bullets.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I see the mission statement and what we're trying to achieve, I don't know if it's like a simple post on Twitter or something like that. I don't know, like again, in terms of the appropriate ways of communicating that, because putting a page out somewhere, no one's gonna really read that. I don't think. Like they'll be intrigued, but I don't know if it have enough reception.
What's Twitter?
Esther, talk to
Okay.
Esther. She's
What's
our
that?
communications.
Oh, is it? Oh, X. Oh,
So I was.
I'm sorry, Richard. Go ahead.
I was like, you don't know it's Twitter? Okay. I haven't called it X in my life, so we'll never go back.
Esther, ask her. That's her job.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation after this, so we'll touch base and see what's realistic. I'm intrigued in terms of how we incorporate the climate lens into reporting.
To reporting for this committee or reporting for?
Well, in terms of like how we educate our workforce in terms of how to have a climate lens. Like, I'm curious how that works.
Okay, so you need to get trained in the climate lens. I can send the document, okay? And so right now, council receives a report from staff on some development, right? And it more than likely is costed. There's an economic evaluation, okay?
I see where this is going.
The climate lens adds the climate evaluation.
Yeah, I see that.
And if you, I mean, so there's a whole bunch of recommendations that I would be bringing to this committee from the Tay Valley plan, not the county plan, we didn't get them in there, that have to do with like adding in, for example, life cycle analysis, adding in the fact that your treasurer should be accounting for the carbon tax in a separate column, okay? So that you are able as council to see how much, when that carbon tax is adding up, increasing, how much money you're wasting, frankly, you know? And so when you get a report from staff about the economic analysis and the climate analysis, and hopefully in there too, then the piece that says, here's the amount of money you wasted on the carbon tax, right? That will help you make those decisions and the long-term decisions too. So that's fundamentally where this is going.
Intriguing.
Yeah, and we are used to other lenses as well. We look, how does this relate to our strategic plan?
Yeah, exactly. So
What are the financial, so we already have, we've been talking about the climate lens at the county.
Yes,
Aaron and I,
yes.
trying to get it incorporated.
who makes that decision to include it?
Council.
Council.
We're just have a voice on committees. The county council makes that, we don't have a voice there.
Yep. And technically, county council is trialing it right now, but I don't know, are you seeing it?
I haven't seen anything in the report.
Interesting.
So do we want to move along to are we good?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
me again. The only thing that I really want to say is the public engagement strategy. So that's 4.3. So you've got running from February through March.
Yep.
I'm going to highly recommend that we work on that, at least start in January, so that the survey be finalized in January. So if you're going to release it 1st of February, fine, goes out then, but then run it through June. I have a feeling this whole plan is going to
Yeah.
get shifted along. But again, because it takes the public time to come to things, right? I think it really has to run over quite a number of months.
Okay.
And so in Tay Valley, we ran it over, I think it was 6 months. When Climate Network Lanark did our own survey, we ran it over, I think it was more like 8 months. But we ended up collecting 900 plus responses, which is conventional for any sort of polling survey that's out there. You know, you'll see it's out of 1,000 responses, right?
Okay.
So for us to get 900 in Lanark County was really good, really good. But we only did that because we ran it over time.
Interesting. Yeah.
We did do it through COVID. It was all electronic, but it still was over time. So I just think much more time needs to be built in for that. So.
Okay, well, we can move on to the next priority issue, which is the meeting format. Mary, did you want to?
I can
Oh,
take that on.
Carl.
Yes, so I think just a quick, I'll make this quick. The procedural bylaw prefers, there's some discussion at the last meeting about meeting format and certainly some interest on behalf of committee members to attend virtually wherever possible, and certainly to minimize unnecessary driving as an example. So we did have a look through the municipal procedural bylaw. It generally prefers in-person meetings with hybrid options for those who need them. So as examples for any of our committees, if somebody is away and they have the opportunity to call in. So I think, so certainly any change to that broad item will necessitate some sort of higher up discussions. We can discuss with the CAO. So I think I guess the question I have for the committee at this point is, how many, I guess the level of interest in committee members who would like to generally attend virtually, just so we know whether it's a couple of members or most or all of the members who'd like to attend these meetings virtually. And staff will certainly will be present here, but welcome the feedback from committee members. Mary, did you have anything additional to add, or does that basically cover what you're looking at?
That covers it.
Okay.
Given the nature of our work, and I understand driving adds to the issue, but there's a return on that. There's some carbon capture, let's say, for us sitting around and putting our heads together here. You weigh it, right? The cost benefit and for me personally, the benefit of being here with live people on this particular topic, which I'm not an expert at all. I'm good at process, so I would prefer, I will want to come here to be with staff to meet. So that's just a personal choice, and I'll reduce an emission somewhere else to make up for this.
Sue?
Far prefer to be here. I have a training thing that's happening on Tuesdays, which is why I couldn't come until 3:30, and I have one more Tuesday for that I think is going to conflict with this. But then after that, I'm okay through to the middle of winter, and I'm going to go away again for a bunch of weeks. So at that point, then I would like to be able to attend virtually. So it's not a clear answer, I'm sorry.
No, I think that's why there's that option there, Sue, so that if need be, you can attend virtually.
I'll be here.
I think I'm in the middle because I just find the timing is a bit of a challenge for me to squeeze everything in and to get here. But I'm torn because I do like being in person. At the same time, I understand the flexibility of being able to join virtually.
How would it
It would
work?
change if it's a little bit later in the afternoon.
No, the timing is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would it work? Would it be like on these screens? I would see your faces.
Yeah.
We've done it easy.
Yeah, but I'm on the other side, so like it's hard to see. That's all.
I could go either way, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah.
So I'm in favor of hybrid option as long as staff have enough notice and that our technology works. Sound, and we've had some issues. We're getting them worked out. It's new in these, so if it's working, it works really well.
And I think there might be just a need for, I don't know, Sue, you might be in the same boat as me in terms of having enough time notification to travel to get here is all. If there's technical issues and we
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the procedural bylaw speak to the chair being present physically though?
It's a good question.
Sorry, does the procedural bylaw speak to the chair?
The chair being physically present? To be physically present to chair a
I
meeting?
did check with the clerk before, so you're able to chair the meeting virtually. So you're able to do that as long as we're not having IT issues that would prevent us from being
Okay.
able to hear you on the live stream. In that case, we would just simply appoint an interim chair and the members would kind of rhyme off everything you're saying.
Okay. That's good. So do we need to check in with the other members who aren't here because they were wanting to join virtually? They might have a different opinion.
Yeah, I guess that's where Mary can check in with the people who are not, members who are not here about their preferences.
About my preferences?
There. So check if you can
Oh,
email
yes,
the
I
members
can
who are
too.
not.
I've already wrote myself a note, so I'm gonna double check with them before we decide, but it sounds like hybrid that's generally acceptable. Today was the exception, but yes, and as Peter said, enough notice, especially if I do run into IT issues, then I know who to contact, so.
That'd be great. Okay. Any other, anything else with that, or are we good with that item?
Sue.
I think we're good from my perspective. I'm just looking get the flavor of the committee so can inform if we need to have a conversation about that at the administration level.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks. So we can move on to project updates.
Sue,
Sorry,
sorry to come.
Just another
Oh,
question
sorry.
around the meeting format. So the agenda for today is, when I saw it online, I think earlier, it was just an hour. So is it our intention to have a meeting that only lasts an hour? Or,
I don't know.
I think an hour is maybe difficult.
yeah, I think so.
Tend to run over.
Yeah.
So maybe hour.
Up to the chair.
So should we maybe, I'm trying to think of how long the last one, like 2 hours is?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we allow for a 2-hour time period maybe?
I personally think so, and in part it gets back to this, I'm sorry. So there's the issues of complying with the requirements of the SCMPCP and their milestone process and blah, 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 and all the work that has to be done by staff and everything. But then there's the issue of what we actually want to see done, right? And how do we engage with the ideas that we want to get into the plan, right? And if we don't have time in the meeting to have that discussion, then I don't think we're going to get very far. So I think that's critical.
So we start at 3. So when would we be done? Say
5? So 3 to 5?
The hard stop at 5.
Mm-hmm.
Be respectful, I
for
guess.
sure. Like 2 hours should be,
Okay.
we should be able to do that.
And then my car won't get towed
oh stop.
at the 2-hour parking.
Oh
You
my
get a ticket,
goodness.
just bring it in.
Okay.
You always park in the back parking lot.
It wouldn't be the first time I got a ticket when I had a meeting at town hall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with the police. Had a meeting with the police and I got a ticket.
Why
is
why the
funny.
police?
You must have gone
Road
I hope they
safety.
took care of it.
I don't think so, I didn't ask.
Which, if I may, which
Yes,
reminds me, as chair of the Police Services Board, is there a climate action discussion happening at Police Services?
Not formally. We've had some conversations around vehicle replacement. And I think it's about the utilize, I mean, the biggest emissions there, we own it, so that the town owns a building that holds the police services in, so it'll fall within our corporate emissions. I think the vehicles, the consumption of fuel in the vehicles will also count. I'm pretty sure it's counted in our corporate emissions, but when it comes to actions, nothing particular there other than we've discussed the transition to EVs as they become available.
So let's just keep in mind that this committee could influence the Police Services Board.
I think formally, I think once we have some action, we would take it to
Okay.
PSP then, yeah.
Thanks.
Electric vehicles, no idling.
Okay, so we're on to project updates, grant monitoring.
So far, there have been no updates on that in terms of any more information. So they're still unclear in terms of what grants would be available at this time.
Now, this regarding
Stuff-
municipal grants we could apply for staff
Yes.
or something, so, yeah, okay.
There's only one that FCM has that would be, I guess, available, but it was available like for a certain period of time last year. So I don't know if it's available again this year. I have not seen any information regarding that.
Green Municipal Fund.
Yes.
For staffing?
Yeah, that's what it was. I don't know if it's available again this year. I've been looking and I haven't seen any information in terms of when it's open or how much it is or anything like that.
And the Ontario one? I think I sent that to you, didn't I?
I don't know, same thing.
No.
So the Ontario,
No.
okay, so I'll look at
The
that one.
Ontario was an energy management something,
Through AMO?
Direct Ontario Government,
Well, I'll check that one out. Thank you.
energy management. And email me if you don't find it.
Yeah, I will do that today, actually. And this Ontario government, you said?
Yep.
Okay.
So if there's no other comments about the grant monitoring or any other thoughts of where we might find money for that, did you have something to
Not
add?
for staffing, no. Well, and just, no, well, yes, sorry, yes. It's a program we're taking advantage of.
We use in Tay Valley?
No, Climate Network Lanark.
Oh.
Let me see what I can find, Richard. I don't know if it's, if
We can talk after.
municipalities are eligible for it, but it's an environmental intern program.
Interesting. I guess NGOs are not the same thing as municipalities.
No.
Well, we can move on to the roundtable discussion. So the first one we have there is Enbridge Gas, presentation first climate change advisory panel.
So Enbridge has made a presentation to the Perth Climate Panel. They have asked to make a presentation to Climate Network Lanark. I'm pretty sure they're probably asking to present to the county's climate committee. And so basically, they now are going around and saying that they're on board with net zero and all of the stuff they're wanting to do that way. And I just think it's rather critical that this committee know what they're talking about, right?
Mhm.
And so if they don't approach us, because they may not even know that Smith Falls is doing this yet, that we should make a point of inviting them in. You know, I'm in my Climate Network Lanark hat. I'll let you know that CNL signed on to a complaint from Environmental Defense to the Competition Bureau, saying that Enbridge has lied in their advertising about climate change and about how natural gas is a clean fuel and all this sort of stuff. And so we are going to be issuing more news releases about that. It's out there publicly, but you know, it's not the major thing that media are covering. So just so you know that. And we are also doing a protest in Lanark Village on Friday because Enbridge is planning to extend a pipeline from Perth up the Highway 511 through Balderson and Lanark Village as part of the whole gas expansion across Ontario. They're doing this also in Merrickville. And so we know, you know, that if we're going to curtail GHGs and make some effort to keep to 1.5, we have to stop the expansion of fossil fuels. So that's simple, right? And so that's part of our effort on Friday as part of the global Day of Action on Climate. And the End Fossil Fuels campaign is we're going to Lanark Village to protest, and we'll be passing out literature from Ontario Clean Air Alliance about electrification and about how getting heat pumps is that much less expensive than going the natural gas route. So with the intention of educating people in Lanark Village that they shouldn't be
Natural gas.
thinking that natural gas is the cheap solution any longer, right? Because it isn't. So just so you know that. And I can pass on the news release about the complaint if anybody's interested. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
A question about
So-
that. Oh, sorry, Sean.
Well, just so I agree, we should invite Enbridge to come and speak to us about their plans and help us understand what they'll be doing going forward and give us the opportunity to express our thoughts towards expansion as well.
Yeah, that was my question, is when they're coming to present to Perth.
They did present last month. Yes.
So that's what they were talking about, was the expansion?
No, it was
Was
sort
it
of a
the-
broad thing, and so a couple of the members of the committee, as you probably know, Perth is looking at a large subdivision, 940 homes, and so a couple of the members of the committee were keen to talk to them about that and about you know, the use of natural gas or not in that development. As CNL, we have put a submission in saying, no, don't use natural gas, use heat pumps, make sure that the subdivision uses heat pumps. And so you know, who knows where that's going to end up. But anyway, that's part of what Enbridge is doing, is shopping around now.
So it's not, do they discuss the rebate? Okay.
You know, I was so unimpressed with the presentation. And I'm sorry, but a couple of people commented to me that they thought she was new on the job. and that she didn't really know much yet. So yeah, Enbridge is the federal government has contracted Enbridge to deliver the HER Plus program, no longer called Greener Homes, called HER. Can't remember what it stands for. Anyway, HER Plus. And so they're doing that, and they are also providing additional funding through Enbridge for natural gas customers to install electric heat pumps, because they're prohibited from technically increasing the use of natural gas, which is great under the federal government's stuff, right? But this is, you know, people are watching, right? And so it doesn't mean that they, like Ontario is behind the expansion of the pipelines. And then you get into discussions of renewable and natural gas, which is in the county's draft plan, right? And renewable natural gas can be gas that is generated by landfills. Except we don't have a landfill in Lanark County or this whole region that's big enough to generate enough to go into any pipeline, right? So that's specious. But that's what Enbridge seems to be hanging its hat on, right? So it needs to get more pipelines so that it can continue to push some gas in there. Anyway, and then they wait for political change.
We'll have them in then.
I'm sorry?
We'll invite them in and hear what they have to say, for sure.
I think that's critical, you know, I really do.
I think Maricville's had natural gas for 15 years, so.
So now,
But Enbridge was hosting an open house just last week, I think, on this, the expansion,
Okay.
you know, out from. There's been some interest from farmers because they have historically used propane to do crop growing. But that's, you know, it's all based on the perception as natural gas is cheaper, or the cheapest form of heat, right? And it is no longer. So, and it's really interesting too. I just heard yesterday, I can't remember, I'm sorry. It's the cooling load that is actually defining now the size of heat pump in a building. Not the heating load.
How long it takes to cool it? How long it takes to cool the building? The cooling load, is that how long it takes to cool the
So,
building?
well, historically in Canada, it's been the heating load, right? You size your equipment dependent on how much heat loss you have in the building, and therefore the equipment has to replace that heat loss, right? In the winter, the cold temperatures. But now, with climate change, it's the actual cooling load that is now being used to define the equipment size.
Interesting.
Very, 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 very.
So we can maybe move to the Hydro One digital use and distribution of power. Did you want to?
So similar sort of thing is for us to invite Hydro in, to have them talk to us, right? Especially with what you guys were talking about with the reservoirs, you know, and the capacity for battery storage. And so basically the general thinking is that going forward, our electricity consumption is going to be defined by and managed by digital technology and distributed energy. Those two things. So I think we need to really understand this, right? We need to understand what it means, not just for individuals, but for the town as an entity too. So, and I think we need to let them know that we're interested, right?
So, well, if it's Hydro One or the IESO or
Both,
OPG.
yes, no, you're very right, Sean, yes,
as well, right? So
yes.
Very
Yeah.
good.
And I'm not sure who.
Generation and independent.
I don't know, you know, I don't have a name of somebody. But
Yeah.
That would take some work to find.
So I've got a good contact at the IESO.
Fabulous.
So I think, and I did talk to her at the annual conference. So I think she'd be willing to, we would just come in with video anyway, so
I think it's better.
Carl captures that in the notes and we'll follow up with her.
Would this be a presentation for this committee? So would it be like, we have 2 hours, so would it be just like a portion of it?
Yeah, it's like 15, 20 minutes.
Peter?
Yeah, distributed hydro was one of the workshops I went to. There's municipally owned that are North American leaders. They already are running it. Niagara is one, and the Sioux has their own, and they're leading North America. And it's all smart driven. It's all, and it exists now. It's phenomenal. It's very complex, very, very. They dumbed it down for the audience, but you could tell that this is
Interesting.
AI is involved. Like, this is very complex stuff.
So there's already do projections and things like that.
But they're municipally owned corporations that are doing this. There aren't very many in Ontario, but yeah.
I just think Smiths Falls is in that rare sweet spot of size that it could end up taking great advantage of some of these things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Do you have something to add there?
No, I'm just taking it all in. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. P3 Panels, manufacturing company in Smiths Falls.
yeah, so this I knew nothing about.
Rideau Lakes, actually.
Sorry?
It's in Rideau Lakes,
Okay,
just to be
Anyway,
technical.
okay.
Close to.
So because of a project I'm gonna also tell you about here, we've been working more closely with Andy Cockburn, who's the chair of the Leeds Lanark Home Builders Association.
Can you hear? Okay.
He knows me too. So it's probably yammered at him already, maybe about some of this. Anyway, so Andy lives in Perth, but he was talking about how in Europe, one of the cost-effective things they've been doing to renovate buildings is instead of going from the inside out, which has been the preferred way in many ways, right? So you've got the building, you re-insulate, drywall, blah, blah, okay? You instead put cladding on the exterior. It's that much easier. And apparently it's super successful in Europe. It's a lot less expensive than from the inside out. And he has suggested that P3 is in an ideal position, this company, to produce those panels for this area.
So
And so if we're looking at Smiths Falls and we're looking at some of the older buildings here, I'm not talking necessarily about individual houses, but apartment buildings, that sort of thing, then we could be looking at engaging P3. They probably would be interested in this development. So that's.
And that could be related to rebates maybe too.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other comments about that?
No, just to, at some point, I just want to make sure that we don't lose ideas, right? That, when we're looking ultimately at our plan, that we're capturing all this stuff. So
Yeah, because I think there's so much potential. There's so many resources and knowledgeable companies and people that we could be tapping into for sure. The next item was Peter O was to speak to it, so I'm assuming we defer that maybe
Yeah.
to the next meeting. And Sue, you had an additional item?
yeah, so Climate Network Lanark is doing this project. We've called it Climate Concierge, and we started it last winter in Almont with a group of people, and it's been a super success, and we're now doing a formal pilot in Almont, Lanark Village, Carleton Place, Perth, and Smiths Falls. Okay.
Include other areas of Lanark Highlands?
I'm sorry?
Does that include other areas of Lanark Highlands or just the village itself?
Just the village. We have to bring people together. The idea is that we bring people together in neighborhood clusters.
Okay.
And then over the course of a few months, monthly meetings, people work through having an audit, getting retrofits done, getting results, that sort of thing. The key thing with our pre-pilot in Almont is everybody who embarked on the process with us ended up taking a greater step than they would have otherwise, which is really what we want, right? And so this is already turning out to be quite successful. You can do this stuff on your own, right? You can go online, you can figure it out, all that sort of thing. But by working together in a neighborhood cluster, you get to share information with your neighbors. You get to exchange, you know, who was the auditor you had, who did I have, I didn't like him, but I really liked him, that sort of stuff. What heat pump did you get? You know, I contacted 3 companies, 2 of them didn't even return their call, but this one did, and I really liked them, whatever. That sort of neighbor stuff. And so I've got some brochures here. We're having a terrible time getting signed up in Smith Falls. It's really interesting. So we have our second group in Almont. It's, you know, full. We have the Perth one is full to over capacity. We have a waiting list.
Wow.
The Lanark Village one was a good size, and that's coming from Lanark Highlands. Carlton Place, dead. Smith Falls, dead. So
When are the meetings typically?
we set them according to the needs of the individuals. So, you know, we'll do whatever they like.
So why we say it's been successful where it is successful?
That's kind of
Is
where I
it
was
like
thinking.
local champions.
And I don't know, Sean, this is part of what we need to be figuring out with this pilot, right? But I'm just gonna pass these over and please, you know, hand them out to everybody you know, whatever here. Communication.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Exactly.
There must have been a breakdown somewhere.
I don't know.
I think too, I don't know, just working with the different municipalities on public health related topics, I find, you know, Carlton Place tends to be very different from Almont, just because they're two of the ones that I've worked with more closely.
Yep.
And I think just being a bedroom community where in Carlton Place in particular, it seems it's just harder to get people together because they don't know each other as much as in Almont, where for some reason the community does seem to have a lot more, I don't know if it's history or
Activity.
so it seems, I don't know, it seems a little different
Fascinating.
that way. So I don't know if Smith Falls is like that or how to, it's gonna be a challenge, I think, to find different ways to communicate when that networking isn't already in existence, that communication, so it might require a bit more effort.
And it's surprising because it does seem once we get sort of 2 or 3 people, then it just.
Yeah.
Success breeds more
I
success.
think that's what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's word of mouth, and then it travels fast. Yeah, I can see that.
Anyway, so we are, you know, we're truly looking to get something going here, and I have a couple of little posters.
I wonder
that I
if
would
this
like
is,
to, so, I just.
That'd be part of our
Yeah.
I
marketing,
wonder if
right?
this is something we should put on our website at the health unit. Like,
Sure.
because we have the, like,
Sure,
what's
and then
happening
just
locally.
pass this on to-
But we
Actually,
could
we
maybe
did
put
want
a
to
note
get the desk
about the Smith Falls one, to
Yeah,
try and
I have
encourage
it too.
participation. That and a post to link to it, like if we put it on the website, may I talk to you about that after? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that would be fabulous.
Say it as it is, right?
It is true. I was just reading the thing here. When you get these printed?
Oh, we didn't, those
Oh.
came from the Ontario Clean Air Alliance.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
Um,
Yeah, they're nice.
Not from Enbridge.
I am promoting their their low income
Hmm.
program, right? For sure. And that's like, but you know, this kills me. It really does. It's just for natural gas. But you know, this is something else, right? Enbridge should be in touch with the town telling us about this. It's okay if I single person in a house heated by natural gas, if they make less than 42,000 a year, two people 70,000 a year, they're eligible for free upgrades.
Upgrades for
Their house,
heat?
insulation, air sealing.
Oh, wow, everything.
I guess it only works
Excuse
for.
me, who in Smith Falls and Lanark County makes much more than that?
With a lot of people will be eligible, obviously.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
I guess it all depends if it's a renters
Can
or
you,
not.
can you share that,
Of course.
please?
Yeah.
Then we can know that we can't do it.
Yeah.
So they could actually switch from natural gas to a heat pump.
Well, I'm not clear on those
Okay.
details,
But we'll
you
take a
know,
look, okay.
Right, well, I think that's the end of the item. So you didn't have, it was just the one addition you had. So I think we can adjourn the meeting. We've got our next meeting October 10th at 3. Oh, sorry, Carl, go ahead.
I'm sorry, folks. I just wanted to note that due to the staff vacation as well as training, we have staff attending the homelessness event up in Lanark, as well as some council members.
Yes. I'll
We're
be there.
going to need to reschedule the meeting that's scheduled for Tuesday, the 10th at 3. So I would
Okay.
recommend that we either, just for simplicity's sake, we either look at it doing the previous Tuesday, the 3rd, or the next Tuesday, the 17th.
Do we want to do a poll to just make
It's
sure
a-
we capture?
Yeah, it's the third, is that Thanksgiving?
10th is the day after Thanksgiving.
Oh, that would be a council meeting.
Mm.
Shoot.
We can poll, there's a couple of committee members not present today, we can
So,
poll.
yeah.
yes.
Okay, that might be good. That way we can.
No, but we're at the home, you signed for rural homelessness?
Is it the 10th?
Uh,
We have to have
conference?
On the 10th, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so we're not doing the 10th.
Oh, the council won't be that day because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but it'll be over,
I suppose it's done by 7 hours, but I'll be done by 4 probably.
yeah.
Okay. So 17th?
Yes, we're doing a poll, so hopefully.
Well, I guess we are adjourned.
Motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment. You all in favor? Adjourned.
Great.